the line in the market.
Right. That's helpful. Okay. And so it sounds like, I was just going to ask about, how you think it's played out as they made that decision to move from doing exclusive programs, one program, one MBA for their entire company, to moving to multiple universities offering MBAs in this example, or, whatever other program.
Right.
And making that change, and whether or not that matters to you, or you think that's impacted you at all, or is that just look like everybody's moving online, so it makes sense for them to include multiple programs into their capabilities?
Well, since we were around sort of at conception with them,
yeah,
and when they were first presenting the product or the offering to us and said, it's going to be exclusive, I remember telling them, you've got a bad business model. And I said, here's what you don't understand about our business is we're going to reject most of the applicants you bring us. And, in fact, we're going to reject a lot of applicants that you aren't going to have any understanding of why we're going to reject them because their, quote, numbers or whatever external factors you're going to have that you can observe are going to look fine, but we'll have people interview them and just won't have a good feel that they're the right person for what we do here. And then you're going to, I said, and if you ever say anything to us about it, that'll rip the relationship apart. So you'll learn not to say anything, but you'll go back home and be extremely frustrated because you spent all this money to bring to us a candidate that we just said no to. And early on we were trying to say, you don't know what you're doing. So when they came back to us later on and said, you were right, we should have a place that these people can go and get a degree, it only seemed natural to us that was where the relationship was ultimately going to end up. And frankly, I think we've got a lot more spend. They spend a lot more dollars now because I kind of think what they do is they go out and sell UNC, and then if we don't accept them, they then sell those students, if you will.
Right.
And this sounds like a very elite comment. I don't mean it that way. They kind of sell them downstream.
Down market, so
That's right. So somebody somewhere finds a home for a school. And that's the model that, frankly, they probably should have had in place from the beginning.
I see. Okay. Okay. And the other factor that I wanted to have you describe a little bit more was that industry article I saw. Are we really seeing MBA applications go down in general? Do you, to the extent that it's, because of a tight labor market, do you think this persists for a while, or what do you normally do in these kinds of situations, as you see this kind of slowdown in enrollment?
Yeah, it's just a cycle we've been through. I've been here for almost 30 years, and I ran our Masters of Accounting program during the dot-com era, and enrollment got cut in half during that period. And, so I said, when the economy is in the tanks, education is no good because everybody knows somebody that went to college and couldn't get a job. When the economy is red hot, education's no good because you don't need to know anything. Anybody can get a job. We're better in the middle, not too hot, not too cold. And so I think right now we're just probably not in quite the perfect conditions. But we've ridden through a whole bunch of these ups and downs. So this is far from a panic or a crisis or great concern for me. If that is indeed what's going on. Okay. If there's some other explanation, if people have decided that, and here's one that, for example, that we worry a lot about. If prospective students are saddled with so much student debt from their undergraduate days that they're reconsidering whether graduate school is doable
everything. And that happened about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago. I was hit by it at I-4. I was hit by it by everything. And there's just a massive uptick in overall demand. I mean, there's a variety of reasons for it, and it's not just Intel's products, it's everything. And so everybody's scrambling for capacity, and that happened about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it hasn't really let up. Yeah, they were shifting to 10. It was equipment makers that couldn't do it, so they had to shift back to 14, and unfortunately, there was some, you can't just cut over these things, within like a month. It takes time. And so once the overall market increased dramatically, and they couldn't get the EUV lines to run efficiently till recently, that's where this gap kind of started.
When was that switch? When was that? So they tried to switch to 10, and then they ended up having to go back to 14. Was that in the past, 6 months, or was that a year ago?
Probably a year and a half. Yeah,
Okay, so that was.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, because the EUV lines are so complex. Those pieces of equipment are so expensive, and they're so complex in that extreme ultraviolet space that it didn't quite work up to what they wanted it to work. And only recently has it really started working well, and that's why ASML and those guys are doing so well, or basically ASML only. And that happened, probably about a year and a half ago. Now it's up and running, and I think, you'll see the switch back to 10 nanometer because all these lines are running, they're up and running the way they want them to.
So you think what's the timeline for when they will successfully, make the full transition to 10 nanometer going forward?
Oh, that's in process. That's been going on for the past year. All that stuff works well now. I was just out there. I would think they're starting to do it now. They're going to have to make the switch. It's also, they already have made the switch in many cases. It's just, who's going to go where and when and how, who's going to get in line, and what products are going to be used. Because what happened was everybody started building some products around that 10 nanometer technology, and it got stalled, so they had to go back. And so the transition's already begun.
But do you think that supply-demand imbalance is kind of settling back out to a normalized level in the near term?
Yeah, in the near term. There's also some issues around, the whole, I don't mean to get really political, but, a lot of the demand came from China in certain spaces, and everybody had this kind of strange thing around the Trump tariffs, and everybody kind of went into this holding pattern. And that's across, many semicon people. Now everybody, it's a little bit more clear. Here's what it is. Here's what's happening. And so it's ramping back up again.
Okay. You mentioned just a broad shift 2 years ago in demand, and which created a supply-demand imbalance across all semi products, I think. How long do you feel that dynamic lasting? Will supply ever be able to catch up in the next few years? And will that kind of imbalance continue, you think, just because demand is growing so fast? Or have the suppliers begin to react and invest, and, over the next year or two, they'll close the gap?
I don't think in the next year or two they'll close the gap, no. I mean, they don't. There's not. It's kind of like this thing. There's not enough people. People got burned too many times. Semicon was always so. I sat in meetings, these big product roadmap meetings, and everybody's asked the same questions. And everybody's saying, well, this is starting to smooth out over time because these people have gotten better at, managing this type of scenario. The demand is not going up there was a huge spike 2 years ago. Now it's just kind of a gradual upward trend that they don't see stopping for the next 3 to 5 years. At least these are the guys, from ASML and Intel. But they're not going to, but obviously they're basically stating that capacity is not growing as much as demand. A lot of this stuff is driven by, they have whole divisions around cars, IoT stuff. I mean, it's the demand alone just from